listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. We are back for part 2 this week with Heather. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, definitely check it out. She's introduced herself already and she's talked about diversifying. But now we're going to dive straight into talking about her experience with navigating TPT and marketing and all the things you can do to try and, deal with sales declining and what can you do? So Heather, tell me, TPT wise, with all these, months you've had where things are lower and stuff, what have you been changing? What have you been doing differently? Like creating more or less products, doing a lot more SEO, optimizing, how have you changed your behavior in TPT in these last few years since you've had some decline in sales? Hope that wasn't a super long question. Rambled there for a bit.
It is, but no, it's complicated. So it should be a long question. I guess the first thing, and this didn't change, but for me, one of the biggest things is I look at my monthly bestsellers. I'll go back to last year and it's okay, what performed? What were my top 10, sometimes 20? It just depends on the month. But what were the 10 or 20 best items? So this coming week, I'm going to start looking at December and go, okay, these items, I need to make sure the titles are up to date. I'm going to, just go through, check titles and snippets, basically. I probably could do covers and thumbnails and previews. I just don't take the time, which is probably terrible, but I kind of have a cohesive look. I've got my fonts, I've got my colors, all my branding pieces in place. So I really don't mess with that stuff a whole lot. So that has been consistent. That I feel is what drove a lot of my success in 2020, 2021, when my store was, I guess, booming, the highest years that I had. I did this year. My June and July were the worst months I've had since I want to say 2017 or 2018. I mean, they were terrible. And I always expect them to be bad, but they were atrocious. It was scary. So in July, I kind of panic bought. I've been a member of YDP since their first beta version came out. I want to say it was the 2020 online conference. I've been a beta member and I had been the beta of their SEO, but at the time, I guess I didn't see the value in it. But July of this year, I did buy their SEO component too. I think I'm on the lowest tier. And ever since then, my drop has not been as drastic. So that's been really nice to be able to go in. And I think I said in the last episode that my sales were down as much as 40% earlier this year. And since July, I've only been down, I think the worst month was down 25%. Mm-hmm. So to regain that extra 15%, I mean, yes, I'm still dropping, but it feels more manageable. I've created a couple new resources based on YDP recommendations, or I've seen a keyword and I'm man, there's only 500 products for that when I search for that. I know my SEO and I've been on TPT long enough. I can get mine up in search between Pinterest and my email list and things like that. I'm not saying I'm going to be in the number 1 spot or even on page 1, but if I can be on the first 2 or 3 pages, I'm doing this. So I have made a few new products. I want to say I've only made 5 new products in the last year. It's just not a priority for me. They're not taking off the same as they used to. That being said, I actually am sitting on a Christmas product right now that I need to hit publish on. I'm just waiting, honestly, for the sale so it goes out in that email. But it was more it was fun. I feel when inspiration hits and something is fun, I have a much easier time getting it cranked out than forcing myself to do something. So that's kind of where I'm at, I guess. But I don't even know now how many of your questions I answered, but I tried.
It's good. I kind of wanted to know, I guess, everyone has different experiences. Some people will have really upped their product creation to be I need to make more products. Maybe that will help my sales. Other people will have slowed down on that. Other people would have really thrown themselves into getting all their previews updated. Everyone's kind of behaves differently. It's just nice to hear hey, what did you do and what was your experience? And I've been doing a lot of optimizations lately. I do a bit of product creation too, but really throwing myself into SEO and thumbnails and previews and things. Yeah. And I think that does make a difference. And it feels to me anyway, it's something you can control. When you feel with all the stuff with sales is so out of your control, you're well, hey, if I make better thumbnails and I completely make this listing look 100 times better, I've done something that hopefully is impactful and it's something I could do, I could control. I can't control, how many buyers are on TPT now compared to last year or like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I did notice August, I think I put up 3 new products, for sure 2, but I think 3 in August. And that was my month with the lowest decline. It was only down like 10 or 11%. So was that correlated? Was it August is never my best month? I know that's typically a very good month for a lot of sellers. That's not been my experience. So I don't know if it was the 3 new resources. I mean, they didn't sell. I think one of them was only sold twice since I put it up. So it wasn't that one that carried me. But yeah, whether that was the cause or not. And I've listed one since then. I didn't notice that month what went up or down. So we'll see if this new Christmas product helps me at all or not. But either way, it was fun to make and I let my kids help too. So it was kind of a fun family project.
So the last one I had was because we've touched on like TPT, we've touched on diversifying. In terms of marketing these last few years, have you done anything different there, like done more or less, taken on new platforms or like ramped up your email or done more Pinterest? Like how's your behavior changed around your marketing to try and deal with all this? I'm curious about that kind of side of things.
Yeah. So Pinterest is pretty much the same. Pinterest has kind of always been my bread and butter, and it's not what it was in 2018 to 2020. But that being said, it's still, I mean, I've got pins that I promoted back in like the fall of 2018 that I still get traffic and sales from now. And I mean, they're still out there, but I'm not promoting them, anymore. So Pinterest is largely still the same. I think I pin something like roughly 10 pins a day. I ramp up a little bit at Christmas just because I have so many Christmas pins. And then I'll ramp up a little bit like before the fall too. But yeah, roughly 10 pins a day. I try and get some new pins out there, but I'm not killing myself for it. I have done some more video pins type things. I think I mentioned I am trying to, with the gal I'm paying to do a video a week, I did start TikTok. I think my best one has had 2,000 views, which I know is nothing crazy, but on the flip side, I'm like, man, if I could just walk into a room and yell out Hojo's teaching adventures to 2,000 people, like, I try and sometimes remember that, like, okay, only 200 people saw this or only 2,000, but that's 2,000 people I didn't reach yesterday. So I try and keep that kind of frame of mind with things. YouTube Shorts, kind of the same thing. I think I had one there that got 4,000 or 5,000 views. Instagram is just not where it's at for me at all. So yeah, no, nothing crazy has changed with marketing. I still send out my weekly emails like I always have. I have done some more email collabs, but I'm not sure that they're overly helping anything. I mean, they're sure not hurting, but I'm just trying to keep my list. I keep it pretty clean and delete like the unopens and stuff like that. But yeah, so marketing wise, yeah, nothing hugely has changed, but I have just tried to stay up on. I've tried some different things with my email just to see what might resonate with my audience. But honestly, I just kind of still keep doing a newsletter style and they can click what they want to click and not click the rest. And it's okay. They keep opening and they keep replying, telling me thank you. So I'm going to keep doing what seems to work for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's actually one of the best things to do, I think, is just to kind of keep doing what's working. So Pinterest has always been your bread and butter, like you just keep doing that. And you've tried a few new things too, so that's good. But it does sound like you're kind of just maintaining things as well, which is good.
Yeah.
I actually did have one more like sneaky last question I was going to throw in.
Okay.
And it was more just because you'd mentioned when we were emailing about burnout. So like, have you found with everything lately going on that's created a kind of like you end up working more than you used to try and compensate? Have you found a bit of burnout in these last few years? And if so, any like tips for how you've navigated that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, and you're in this season, so I'm like, I don't want to scare you. But so when I was ramping up TPT, I went full time in 2015. I became a VA in 2015. I became a mom in 2015. And then I had my second child in 2017. And by like 2020, it was not good. I mean, I was sometimes working 60 hours a week and then 2 little kids underfoot. Well, at one point, I had about 20 to 30 hours of VA work that I was doing. I think the most active clients I ever had was about 40. So I was managing Pinterest accounts for 40 people while running my own business, which was ramping up quite a bit at the time. Yeah. So, I mean, like I totally did it to myself. And then I quit the VA business. Well, I mean, largely quit the VA business at the end of 2019. Like I was at this tipping point where I was like, I'm making enough. So then obviously, and then 2020, like the whole world just kind of caught on fire and everything went nuts too. So yeah, it was just too much. So, I mean, I still am working probably even my slow weeks, like summer is 20 hour or 10 hours a week. School year is more like 30, but I'm trying to do some other things. And I'm very like when my kids are home, I try really hard to be home and be present. It's not always the easiest. And I don't know. I feel like I'm still like in burnout recovery in a way. I don't know. Like I feel like that's why I got the horses too, so I can go outside and play with my ponies and
Yeah, it's good to have
relax.
something outside of TPT. So if anyone listening, I think if you're finding yourself in that, like you've got to remember that your family is most important, and it's good to have your own hobbies and your own interests and things outside of TPT, because it can very easily take over. And I think we all end up experiencing that to some degree, which can be really overwhelming. But yeah, the horsing, great advice. Probably not something everyone could do, but just in general, having something outside of TPT for yourself is really good.
Go find your happy place.
Yeah. We actually have to wrap this up. We're going to be kicked out of our Zoom meeting soon. So that's all we've got time for, everybody. But thank you so much, Heather, for coming on. This was really awesome to hear from you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I will put links in the show notes so people can like connect with you and check you out and everything like that. But yeah, I'm really glad you joined us.
Yes, thank you so much. It was fun.
So that's it for my discussion with Heather. I actually had a great time chatting with her. It's just really nice to talk about experiences as a seasoned seller, like how to navigate these really tricky times when sales are down and you feel like everything's out of your control. It's just like really nice to chat about things with her. And I really hope you got something from this episode and enjoyed hearing about these topics. I think everyone navigates these kind of situations very differently. You may be doing something completely different to what Heather's doing or what another seller's doing. You might be doing things very similar. We all just try to survive these kind of situations the best we can. I think it's good to stick with what's working and what's making money for you. Like when Heather was saying, she just, she keeps doing Pinterest because that works for her kind of thing. I think it's important to keep things up. I think it's also good to try new things, like to, if you're seeing a plateau or decline, to always make a change and to try something new, because otherwise you're just never going to make any progress. And it's really nice Heather did that. But I also think it's really good to make sure you're always focusing on the profitable stuff. I didn't experience a big decline in sales when personalized search came into place. I actually had some really great months where I benefited from it. But then the next year after that, when it was turned back off and I'd had that like inflated kind of, sales months here and there, some of those months then were a bit lower because it was like, oh, this is not your normal growth kind of thing. So I have actually, for the first time in a very, very long time, seen what it's like to have some months that are lower than the year before. That was quite eye-opening. I'm not going to lie to you. Things are back on track now. But I actually did things in a similar sort of way. Like I maintained things like my Pinterest that, were working and stuff. I didn't actually end up taking on anything new. I've kind of doubled down on my optimizations. Honestly, that's something I'm really into at the moment, is doing a lot of SEO and thumbnails and previews and that kind of thing. But honestly, yeah, everyone does things a little bit differently. Where you spend your time is totally up to you. I think as long as you are keeping up the things that bring you money, maybe trying something new if you really want to, but making sure that you spend your time wisely on the profitable stuff's always great. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast, so I won't repeat myself. You've heard it all before, but it is really good to be mindful of where you're spending your time. And as we talked about at the end of this episode, burnout is very real on TPT. It actually happens for a lot of newer sellers in their first few years of just like churning out like their first 100 products. That can be really full on. Learning all these new marketing platforms. A lot of people actually burn out quite early on doing a lot. But it's actually also easy as a seasoned seller to reach burnout because you have so many things now on your plate. That can be really stressful. And then, of course, in times like this, if you've been seeing a decline in sales, you start trying new platforms, you start trying new things, you start diversifying, and then suddenly, you've got even more going on. And that can be really burnout inducing because you're like, frantically trying to keep your business alive. And that's really full on. And so I think having that thing outside of TPT is so important, where your whole life isn't thinking about or working on TPT, having your own hobbies or interests, or like moving your body for mental health, or going out with your friends and family, like making sure you do have something outside of TPT, I think is really, really important. And I hope that's a good takeaway that we can all have from this episode, because I always hear those stories. People say, like later in life, when they look back on their life, what did they regret? What did they, people like elderly always looking back on their life. My husband actually happens to work with elderly people, but a lot of elderly people very rarely say, oh, I wish I'd worked more. And so that's something to really keep in mind, I think, is, whether you're getting horses or whether you are taking up running, or whether you want to go out on a Friday night and have cocktails with your friends, or whether you make a conscious effort to start prioritizing your family more and doing like family days out and things, like not spending your weekends working on TBT, but like, hey, let's all go out together as a family, spend time together. Like, I think those things are really, really important to make sure that you have a well-rounded life. And I think it's really important for your mental and physical health too, when you're trying to navigate really, really stressful and difficult times like this. Because as a seller, you will have this. Whether you're a new seller struggling to grow your store, or you're struggling to scale your business, or you see a plateau or decline, like there will be times in your business where things are really, really hard. And I think if your whole life is revolved around TPT and that's all you stress about and worry about, and you spend too many hours on it, you're just going to spiral into a really negative place. And so I think it's really important to remember that there is more to life than TPT, and try to have those times outside of it where you do something for yourself and you do things for your mental health, and you try to look at life outside of the TPT world. We can get very caught up in it sometimes. But anyway, I hope that that's been helpful, and I really hope you've enjoyed these last 2 episodes. I also hope that you have an absolutely terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.